Now, the fourth reason not to buy in a 55 plus has a lot to do with the real estate itself, okay? And about 10% of American seniors right now live in a 55 plus community. But just like any other development, you can buy in one that is old, and if a new one crops up not too far from your old one, that can actually cause the value of that place to come down because everybody's going to be attracted to the new place, not the old one. And the prices at 55 plus communities are a double-edged sword, because when you're looking around for a property in one of these communities, you'll probably quickly realize that the prices are significantly lower than they are in communities that are not 55 plus. And the main reason for that is, of course, because the buying pool for people who can own one of these places is limited. And yes, I'm aware that you have 55 plus communities where maybe only one of the buyers needs to be 55 and older and the other one can be 18 years old, and you can still have some young people living amongst you or have younger neighbors due to those sort of things. But in general, you're going to have mostly 55 and older people because that's the demographic that these places appeal to. So it might be nice that in the beginning when you go to buy one of these properties that the price is low, but also realize that when it comes time to sell, that for the same reasons it was low for you when you bought in, it's also going to be low when you go to sell. So you have to know that going into the transaction, that you're not going to see the same level of appreciation as you would in a normal community. And another thing to consider when it comes to the value of the real estate itself is, one thing I have noticed is that in 55 plus communities, oftentimes you have a lot of people living on a fixed income, right? So whether we're talking about an HOA community or a 55 plus condo, that can be problematic, especially when it comes to the repairs and costs associated with keeping a building in good standing or keeping the neighborhood looking good. Because the costs, as we know, for anything with real estate are rising substantially right now, and keeping up with those costs can be difficult, if not impossible, for people who live in these communities. And I'd be willing to bet some of the condos here in Florida, for example, that are going to get shut down due to the new reserve laws we have on the books now and how much the expenses are rising, a lot of them are probably going to be 55 and older condos, guys, because most of the people living in these places cannot afford these expenses, and it's one of the main reasons they buy into them to begin with, because it's cheap, it's what they can afford, right? But all of a sudden, if the fees triple overnight, then a lot of people won't be able to afford that, and you're going to see a lot of these buildings just completely get shut down because of it. And the fifth reason not to buy in a 55 plus community is just because it might get old. Okay, the whole situation might get old. You know, you're paying extra money to live in one of these communities. It's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to be doing all this stuff every day. But how many days in a row can you play tennis and pickleball and golf or whatever? Like, that stuff is fun, but even with how fun it is, it might still get old after a while. And yeah, if you're young enough and you feel vital enough to be able to still move, you can just sell the place and move to a more normal community if you want to. I think what a lot of people end up finding out after living in one of these communities for quite some time is that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. You're always going to have a subset of people that just love it and thrive in this environment and say it's the best thing ever, right? Like, even for example, like, I've been to the Villages a couple times. That's like the biggest 55 plus community that is here in Florida, or maybe anywhere. You see people hanging out at the bars and the restaurants, and people coming out to the free concerts and stuff. But when you go through the neighborhoods during the daytime, guys, you see a lot of people hanging out by their house, not doing a whole lot, not interacting, not doing all of the activities that they're paying for, right? And so for those people, you can tell it has already gotten old, but they're stuck, right? They're maybe too old to move, they don't have the energy or the will to move, or maybe even the finances to move, and you're stuck with that decision. So just know yourself and figure out if this might get old for you a little too quickly. And sadly, there's a lot of older people who are being forced out of their homes right now. Specifically, what I'm talking about are continuing care retirement communities. Now, this is different than a 55 plus. I'm not telling you it's the same thing, because it isn't. But what this is exactly what I just said. You know, these facilities promise lifetime care in exchange for entrance fees that can range anywhere between 200 grand to over $1 million, depending on the place. But the reason I'm bringing this up now is because these facilities target the same demographic of people, and you have to understand that this might be a problem too. Usually people will enter them when they're relatively healthy, pay that large fee up front, then you can usually choose of several different types of care while you're there. You can have Life Care, which offers unlimited assisted living and nursing care at no extra expense. You can have Modified, that provides a fixed set of services for a defined period. Or you can have Fee for Service, which is additional care is paid for separately at market rates. And obviously one of these facilities would be pretty appealing for somebody who is getting older and they have health problems, and they know they're going to need somebody to take care of them as they age, and they don't want to be a burden on their family, or maybe they don't have family. But a lot of these retirement facilities are going bankrupt, guys, due to the rising costs, due to labor shortages, due to wage increases. And just like condos, a lot of these retirement communities are not keeping enough money in their reserves in order to honor their long-term care commitments, which is just horrible that this is happening. Instead, what a lot of them are doing is they're using deposits from new residents, tax-exempt bonds to meet existing obligations, which creates a very unstable financial future for these properties. Some of these facilities are even supposed to offer a refundable entry fee, and when people change their mind, some of these places don't even have the money to repay the entry fees because they are so broke right now. So if you're going to be somebody looking at moving into one of these communities, you need to really do your diligence, guys. On top of all the diligence we already talked about, moving into a 55 plus, you have to look at even more things with these retirement communities. You have to look at the cash on hand. You know, you want to see anywhere between 120 to 200 days of operating cash reserves. You want to look for places that have operating revenue that stays within 5 to 10% of expenses. You want to look at occupancy rates. You want occupancy rates above 90%, because consistently low occupancy can signal financial trouble. You want to review how much debt the facility's in. You also want to ask for their annual financial reports. And really, you should be hiring probably an attorney that's familiar with these retirement communities to review all this stuff for you, because if not, you can get burned severely. Now, if you're somebody who's looking to sell your home in retirement, there's also a few things that you need to be aware of. In fact, one of the things I see a lot of older people fall into when it comes to listing their home for sale is they're kind of out of touch with what appeals to modern home buyers. Like, for example, especially with the decorations and the way the house looks, maybe even the layout, things like that might not really be up to par for a homeowner in 2025, which is fine. I'm not saying you have to just jump in there and remodel the whole place just because, you know, it doesn't appeal to a younger buyer, but recognize that your house is probably going to have to sell for a good chunk of change less than your neighbors who just did a full renovation down the street. And yeah, maybe they were able to sell for $200,000 more than you, but that's because a renovation is a tremendous amount of work, and buyers really value turnkey homes. So if somebody's going to have to come in there and do all this work on your behalf, then you better realize that you're going to have to give some sort of a discount for that. The other thing you can do, guys, is you can get a good real estate agent. And I know a lot of people will say, how do I know if I'm hiring a good real estate agent? Well, part of it is you have to go with your gut, but the other part of you can go by reputation. You know, go by what people have to say about them in terms of neighbors, your friends. If you know anybody who used them, check out their reviews online. Check out how long it takes them to sell a property, for example. And of course, if you ever need a recommendation for an agent, I can always set you up with that completely free of charge. The link is down in the description of all of my videos. And one of the main things you have to think about before even listing your home for sale is if you have already put together a will or a trust, because if you haven't done so, then it can really tie up the sale if something were to happen to you while the house is for sale. Or say you're going to buy another house and you haven't done this, then whenever you pass away, your remaining family members are going to be left kind of sifting through everything or even fighting against who's going to be the executor of your estate, different things like that, and you don't want those problems. So really, you need to make sure that you have a will or a trust set if you're getting up there in your years and you're looking at transitioning from one property to another, because it's going to save you and your family so much time later on and so much hassle. Could end up costing your estate a lot of money due to litigation or hiring a third party to be an executor, different things like that that can easily be avoided if you just do this first. So I hope this information was helpful for you and gives you an insight into why you may or may not want to live in one of these 55 plus communities or one of these retirement communities, because they definitely comes with their pros and cons. But in general, it seems like a lot of them come with more cons than pros. So keep that in mind unless you're just the right person, the right personality that can really take advantage of one of these places. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.